Okay, so today had a very unfortunate thing happen to Danny
Those
in
red bubbles
Fire
are
Temple.
pretty shit. There's a case coming. What?
So, normally you roll into the fire and your roll invincibility keeps you from dying. And then you can backflip through the fire that's behind you. And yeah, there's one very specific scenario where you can die when doing this, and I'm gonna try to explain why. So the first important piece of information is how getting hurt by fire works. And I don't mean walking on lava, I mean the fire that like sticks to you and slowly decreases your health. I have on screen here the function that is responsible for dealing that damage. You can see here what's highlighted. The jump to this function is what decreases your health. And if I set a breakpoint on that so that it is called every time you take damage, you'll see that it's gonna get called once I get the initial hit. And once I start taking fire damage, it starts getting called in intervals. So I'll spare the time of digging through the code and showing exactly where this is, but getting burned by the fire is dependent on this timer that I have on screen here. This is a global frame counter that increases by 1 whenever you're in normal gameplay, so not in pause screen or file select. So you'll see if I pause the game, it stops. Now, this value, it will check in intervals of 8 frames. So it will do some math on this timer to get a value between 0 and 7. And every 8 frames will call this function, which will damage you. So this means that in like a speedrun context, you essentially have no control over when fire will actually start damaging you. Because this timer starts counting up right when you reach the title screen and doesn't stop counting unless if you go to file select or pause. So you have pretty much no control over it. Now, the other important piece of information is how invincibility works. So this byte on screen right here, not the one that's counting, the one next to it, is for invincibility. So you'll notice that when I roll, that value gets set to F6 and counts up to 0. And that is the time of your roll invincibility. So that's for invisible invincibility. Whereas when you get hit by something and you're flashing red, that timer counts from 14 down to 0. So that value is shared between both types of invincibility. Now, I'm gonna set a right breakpoint on my invincibility timer and roll into the fire. And you'll see that I get F6 written to my invincibility. That is from the roll, and it starts counting up. Now, even though I've gotten hit, this invincibility timer is going to keep counting up for the roll. It is not going to get set for the damage until it counts all the way up, hits 0. On this frame, you are vulnerable, you can get hurt, and then gets set to 14 so that it can start counting down for your damage invincibility. So what this means is, when Danny rolled into the fire and got hurt, he rolled into the flame at such a time that his roll invincibility timer was set to 0 on the same frame that the global frame timer was at an interval of 8 that allowed the fire to kill him. And since he was at a quarter heart, all he needed was that one hit. Because you need both the roll invincibility timer to hit 0 and for the global frame timer to be at an increment that you'll take damage, it's pretty unlikely that this will happen. But I think people doing runs with 1/16th heart fire should probably hit the switch just to be safe. I don't know. I guess it's up to the individual, but it's pretty much out of your control. You can't know what your global frame timer is at, or if you'll roll at a time that they'll line up. It's basically luck. But yeah, that's it.